The South China Sea disputes involve both island and maritime claims among several sovereign states within the region, namely Brunei, the People's Republic of China, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. There are disputes concerning both the Spratly and the Paracel Islands, as well as maritime boundaries in the Gulf of Tonkin and elsewhere. There is a further dispute in the waters near the Indonesian Natuna Islands. According to the World Bank, the South China Sea holds proven oil reserves of at least 7 billion barrels and an estimated 900 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, which offer tremendous economic opportunity for smaller nations like Malaysia, the Philippines, and Vietnam, and energy security for China's large, growing economy. As much as 50% of global oil tanker shipments pass through the South China Sea, which sees 3 times more tanker traffic than the Suez Canal and more than 5 times that of the Panama Canal, making the waters one of the world's busiest international sea lanes. More than half of the world's top 10 shipping ports are also located in and around the South China Sea. The region has also seen increased militarization in response to China's burgeoning power, raising the stakes of a potential armed conflict and making disputes more difficult to resolve. Vietnam and Malaysia have led regional military buildups and increased arms trade with countries like Russia and India, while the Philippines doubled its defense budget in 2011 and pledged 5-year joint military exercises with the United States. The Philippines also embarked on a modernization program costing roughly $1 billion that will rely heavily on US sales of coastal patrol boats and potentially fighter jets. Experts say that the United States faces a dilemma and tough balancing act in the region, as some countries in ASEAN would like it to play a more forceful role to counter what they see as a greater Chinese assertiveness, while others want to see less US involvement. The priority on all sides should be to avoid military conflict. Even as China spars with its Southeast Asian neighbors, it is becoming the largest trading partner and one of the biggest direct investors of most Southeast Asian states since an ASEAN-China Free Trade Area came into effect.
The Philippines began exploring the areas west of Calauan for oil in 1970. Exploration in the area began in Reed Bank in 1976. Gas was discovered following the drilling of a well. However, China's complaints halted the exploration. The 9-dotted line was originally a boundary, an 11-dotted line first indicated by the then Kuomintang government of the Republic of China in 1947 for its claims to the South China Sea. After, the Communist Party of China took over mainland China and formed the People's Republic of China in 1949. The line was adopted and revised to 9 as endorsed by Zhou Enlai. In the 1970s, however, the Philippines, Malaysia and other countries began referring to the Spratly Islands as included in their own territory. On the 11th of June 1978, President Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines issued Presidential Decree No. 1596, declaring the Spratly Islands referred to therein as the Calayan Island Group as Philippine territory. China's audacious and clumsy 9-line claim to about 85% of the South China Sea and other claims further north in the East China Sea have come with 7 now infamous island building projects. Despite claims that none have any military applications, satellite images of the 3,100-meter airfields it has constructed on some of the islands show they have been used by fighter jets and long-range survey drones and aircraft, and anti-ship missile batteries have been established. This frantic activity, which a US admiral likened to the creation of a great wall of sand, has been taking place on obscure outcroppings with names such as Fiery Cross Reef, known as Yongshu Reef by the Chinese, Kajatingan Reef by the Filipinos, and Dacho Thap by the Vietnamese. Its armada of vessels has put Beijing at serious odds with Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, Japan and South Korea, which all have claims that overlap with those of China.
But it is the doughty, impoverished Philippines which has asked the International Court for a ruling on China's claim to shoals and reefs that are 6 times closer to Manila than they are to the Chinese mainland, and where the Chinese Coast Guard has used intimidation and sometimes forced to expel Filipino fishermen who have used rickety skiffs to harvest the surrounding waters for centuries. Claiming that it has a historic right to everything that it is claiming, China has already rejected a court's jurisdiction to hear the David and Goliath case. Still, in preparation for a ruling that it has said it won't respect, and which almost every maritime law expert who is not Chinese reckons it will lose, it has gone on a loud diplomatic offensive, trying to get countries as far away as Africa, where it has huge investments, to say that it is in the right. The Trudeau government, which badly wants to increase trade with China, has tried to say as little as possible about the dispute, but as a trading nation with much at stake elsewhere in Asia, and many of its traditional partners agitated by Beijing's actions, Ottawa's fence-sitting may at some point become untenable. It will be expected to say more than that it wants the matter resolved peacefully. Beijing's scheme seems to be about turning the South China Sea and a fair bit of the East China Sea into lakes where it controls navigation, the rich fisheries, and what are believed to be large oil and gas deposits. To put teeth in its claim, China has rapidly ramped up military spending. India, Australia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Japan and the Philippines, with what little money it has, have also gone on spending sprees. Janes, a defense and security intelligence analyst firm, calculates that military budgets across the region will increase from $435 billion in 2015 to $533 billion in 2020.
There's growing concern that tensions over territorial disputes in the South China Sea could escalate into a military confrontation between China and its neighbors, a confrontation, many argue, that would inexorably draw in the United States. Bonnie Glaser, a leading figure on US-China relations, warned this April that the risk of conflict in the South China Sea is significant, and cites 3 scenarios that could compel a US military response. 1. A clash stemming from US military operations within China's exclusive economic zone that provokes an armed Chinese response. 2. Conflict between China and the Philippines over natural gas deposits. And 3. Disputes between China and Vietnam over seismic surveys or drilling for oil and gas.
However, military confrontation is not the only plausible outcome. China's rise has already caused more regional counterbalancing than it would have expected, and it has little desire to take steps that would drive its neighbors further into America's embrace. Furthermore, despite over 2 years of speculation, it still isn't clear if the leadership regards the South China Sea as a core interest, on par with, say, Tibet or Taiwan. While China's neighbors, especially the Vietnam and the Philippines, don't want to concede their territorial claims, they understand that a confrontation with China would be foolish in the extreme. The US and China also don't want to undermine the hard work that they've done over the better part of the past decade to forge a stable working relationship, nor do they want to take the risk of going from intense competitors to open antagonists, a risk that would increase considerably if they engaged in such a confrontation. So, what are the options for short of a clash at sea? 1. As recognized many years ago by the late Deng Xiaoping, the only viable way to deal with the intractable territorial sovereignty disputes in the South China Sea is to set aside the disputes and jointly develop the resources. 2. A purer form of conflict, limited to the naval realm, whereby countries will be content to maneuver for position with their warships on the high seas, while making competing claims for natural resources. 3. China is engaged in salami slicing, the slow accumulation of small actions, none of which is a casus belli, but which add up over time to a major strategic change. Washington may conclude that the only politically viable response is to encourage the small countries to more vigorously defend their rights, even if it risks conflict, with the promise of US military backup. Currently, the dispute is purely played out with words. The danger is, though, there could be a miscalculation or escalation that could lead to something different and more dangerous.